Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Championship Leadership Podcast. And we're excited here today to have William Moore with us out of Chicago, Illinois. So how you doing?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me on, Nate. Appreciate it. Good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you a native of Chicago or?
No, I've been all over.
Okay.
Well, I'll preference my mom was an Army brat. So
Okay.
yeah, I actually was born in California. We lived in Hawaii, Honolulu for years.
Oh, wow.
That's the Maryland for many years. Then I was in Florida for about half my life, Orlando, Florida. I went to school in Winter Park, Florida, and then moved here about 5 years ago.
Gotcha. All right. Well, before we get too much into you and your story and what you're up to, Championship Leadership's the name of the podcast. I always like asking this question first. What comes to mind for you, or what does championship leadership mean to you when you hear that?
Championship leadership, to me, I kind of associate that with just kind of the term I use is firing on all cylinders. Kind of attaches to these 5 cores I talk about. There's these main areas of your life, which are your mindset, your career and your finances, your relationships, your physical health, and your emotional health and giving back. And to me, the goal is to live a holistic lifestyle, to not just be focused on one little area, but to try to make sure you're balancing them and growing in each of these areas. And I think if you're able to pull that off successfully and continue to grow, I think that you become a championship leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's fun to hear all the different ways that the championship leadership's been sliced up by the guests here. It's always different and a little bit unique. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Like what's the path you've been on in life and how that's gotten you to where you are today and what it is that you're up to today?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, I've kind of been all over. My parents were hippies. I was born Rocky Clay Wooten Thomas Moore, brother to to Puff Sunpath Moore.
Okay.
If that gives you any idea.
Yeah.
They both rebelled. They were actually both came from pretty, blue collar, straight. Well, my dad more so blue collar. As I said, my mom's dad was a general in World War II,
Mm-hmm.
Star general, and the Korean War. So they both just said, to heck with this straight edge stuff. We're gonna, 70s. They just jumped right at 60s and 70s into the hippies movement.
Yeah.
And it was. Hawaii was cool, but we didn't have any money. My sister lived in a van for the first couple of years. She's older. And then by the time I was born, we had this small little apartment. My parents divorced young. My mom, unfortunately developed a drinking problem. So she was an alcoholic. She was also very verbally and physically abusive, which I think kind of stemmed from her father, the general, who learned it from his family, these failure habits that pass down from generation to generation. Yeah. But then I'm going to break though. So it was a bit of a tough childhood. We were the only white kids in our school. And we were definitely the outsiders. We were called Howleys, which the local Hawaiian kids call.
They call you Howleys?
Howleys, which is it's a term for white, unwanted outsiders, basically.
Okay.
So then we moved my mom actually, to get financial help, moved to Bethesda, Maryland to be by her grandparents. She reconciled with them. My grandfather actually boycotted the wedding. He was so upset that she was hippie and marrying another hippie. So, but then they kind of reconciled. We lived there, and I had that experience of seeing they were, that side of life, and we lived in a nicer suburban neighborhood. But I didn't really fit in there either because I developed this pigeon slang from Hawaii, and I was, shoulder length hair and this hippie kid, and there's all these, kids coming from the suburbs. So flash forward to college, I was your typical victim. Sure that life was out to get me. My brain was broken. There was nothing I could do about it. I was hoping for a fresh start, but I didn't get into everybody in my hall. And it sounds like white boy problems, but got into a fraternity or a sorority, all the new kids in our freshman hall. And I was literally the only one that didn't. And looking back now, what I know about humans and how to make friends and all these things, it doesn't surprise me because I was just all wrapped up in my own ego and myself and was so insecure. But it was devastating at the time. And I just sort of threw myself into studies and was like, okay, I'm just going to figure out I'm just, this is all I have, and it's either this or suicide. So I chose that. And fortunately, I had a professor that introduced me kind of on the side, serendipitously, to a book. I really admired this professor. I was like, I want to be that guy when I grow up.
Yeah.
He was young and hip and cool. And I was like, yes, this guy. And he's like, yeah. So I read this book called How to Win Friends and Influence People when I was younger. Completely changed my life. Anyways, back to the lecture. And I just like wrote it down.
Yeah.
Didn't hear a word he said for the rest of the lecture. Went straight to the library. Fortunately, we had it at our school library, and I just devoured it. And from that moment on, it was like something shifted in my brain where I was like, okay, there's hope. I can reinvent myself. There's these universal principles in the world that I can take advantage of. I've been ignoring. I didn't know about them. And I just became a self-help beast, devouring all these books and using myself as a human science experiment and testing things and taking notes and seeing what worked, and just slowly by slowly kind of building, more confidence and more, really sort of, like I said, taking advantage of these laws that have been around since the beginning of time. They're going to be around till the end, that I've been ignoring. For instance, How to Win Friends and Influence People. That whole book, if you could sum it up in one sentence, it was written way back in the 1940s. But if you read it today, you would think it was written yesterday, other than the outdated, analogies and stuff they use. But it's basically just make people feel important and special and give to others, and it will come back 1,000 times. It's not rocket science, but that's how that's human nature. And if we make it all about ourselves and we're selfish and we don't pay attention to other people and we don't make them feel special and we don't, actively try to help them and serve them, we're going to struggle much more in our lives, in our careers, in our relationships, and all this. So that was kind of the beginning of it. And then flash forward 25 years later, I was able to sort of build out these main areas of my life, like I said. And I didn't at the time put it all together that there's these 5 cores that we all share.
Yeah.
But, slowly but surely I started improving my mindset, which is core 1. My career and my finances became an obsession. I was like, I'm going to become so filthy, stinking rich. All those people that were mean to me are going to feel so bad, right?
Right.
The whole revenge story.
Yeah.
And then, my relationships obviously were improving. My physical health, I got that early on, how important it was and how it's connected to the mind. So my eating habits, my workout habits and whatnot. And then the emotional side, just learning to deal with stress, making sure I was incorporating my passions and stuff that is super important to me. And the giving back, which luckily I got early on, not only how good it makes you feel to do it, but how it ends up coming back tenfold always when you give back to the world. And so it's like, and now I'm a dad, I got a 2 and a 5-year-old. It's like, what legacy am I going to leave? Is the world going to be better or worse for having me in it? And so that's kind of one of the things that it's in my mantra that I say every morning. So sold my business. I did end up making that money. Although by the time I made that money, I wasn't focused on these other people anymore, but that's how it started. We sold our company in 2019 that I built for $321 million. It was called Doorstep Delivery, which that merged with a company called Bite Squad and was bought by a company called Waiter Holdings. So I didn't get a check for $321 million. We had investors, but I had enough money to where I didn't technically have to work for the rest of my life. And I decided, you know what? I've got these 2 small boys now. I had a tough childhood. I feel like the system's broken and that a lot of people are coming up through the system and feeling the way I do by the time they get to young adulthood. So I want to help people learn from all the things that I did growing up, especially my 2 kids.
Yeah. So how are you going to go about that?
So I started this company called More Momentum. My last name is Moore, M-O-O-R-E. And so to me, kind of the main gist of it all is we all, as I mentioned, have these core areas of our life that we need to make sure that we're not just focusing on one of them and ignoring the rest. But in order to be our happiest and best selves, we're balancing them and we're continuing to build momentum in each. And to me, the way to do that, it all circles around your habits. And I have what I call failure and success habits. So as I just mentioned, we have this broken system, in my opinion, where we're, schooling peers, parents, parents are a crapshoot. You hope you get parents with good values and whatnot and teach you the right things. And even if they try to tell you, at the end of the day, you're going to do what they do, not what they say, right? We're little parrots as we're growing up. And the school system, in my opinion, focuses on a lot of the things that are just useless. Like I remember taking advanced algebra and trigonometry and all these things. And it's like, okay, where's how to balance your checkbook? learning the law of compounding to learn, you know, these are things that I learned as I read on my own. Like I remember reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich. And I've now used those principles to become wealthy, but it's this basic stuff they still don't teach in school: emotional intelligence, setting goals. You know, it's like, why are we learning all these other things? So part of my goal and my mission is to just revamp all that. And again, it all centers around habits. And so the idea is you want to shine a big spotlight on your life and each of the failure habits that you might have developed in each of these areas, and then replace them with the success habits using my system.
Okay. I love it. That's great. Yeah. That's very interesting stuff. Very close to a lot of the things that I do with my clients too. So I'm definitely geek out on that.
Nice.
Who are some of the championship leaders? You know, maybe it's a coach, a mentor, a friend, a relative, somebody close to you that has impacted your life, and really more so, like, what is it? What are some of the characteristics about those people that maybe you've taken to help mold who you are as a leader?
So, God, at the risk of sounding, you know, I don't know how this will come off, but I mean, I'm always a brutal, honest guy.
Yeah.
You know, I really feel like I kind of did it myself. I definitely, those early years, seeing, I mentioned briefly my grandparents and the others, how the other side lives, and like seeing like they, you know, they had a nice house and, you know, they did things a certain way versus the complete opposite of my free loving hippie parents and whatnot, which that was also I got great lessons from and stuff. Like I'm very sensitive and caring, and I care about the planet. I care about other people, and you know, just some of those freewheeling hippie vibes definitely came from that. But then there's also the, you know, the responsibility side, and this is how you know, you've got to work hard and commitment, and you know, keep your commitments to yourself. These types of things definitely came from them, but I never really had a mentor. And I just sort of, I feel
no one's come along your way and like put their hand on your shoulder and
no, I didn't. Yeah. And, you know, I feel I was just always sort of, and I don't know if I was born with this or it came out of desperation because I was hitting my rock bottom in college, and I was like, it's either, you know, reinvent myself and figure it out or kill myself, you know, like I said. But I just sort of had this spark of like, I am going to change. And I just had this passion of just being able to, and my business, my relationships, I always had this ability to push through where I would see others stop. You know, like with our business, I mean, it took 3 years. I have a million stories on how easy it would have been to quit our business, to give up. We were robbed. We had somebody try to steal our business plan from us. We had the guy that sold us the business plan tried to turn around and actually compete with us. Like there was just so many things. And I just said, I know this is a good plan. So this was restaurant delivery, by the way. So this was Grubhub, Uber Eats, DoorDash, before those guys ever existed. So this was like 12 years ago. We were one of the first big ones in. And so we ended up dominating the Southeast and had 19 branches when it was all said and done, mainly in Florida and like Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina. And, you know, now obviously you see what that industry's become, but we did it. We bootstrapped it. We didn't raise any money at first. We did it all ourselves. And we just had to push through like mofos and just say, never say die. And I think that I'm fortunate to have that just built in me. And, you know, I realized also whatever you end up choosing is a big part of that. Like I believed in what we were doing, and I knew that there was potential there. So when we kept hitting those hurdles and obstacles, again, that goes back to the mindset core. I was like, okay, we just failed miserably. This sucks, but what did I learn from it? How can I, you know, weave around it and pivot and keep moving forward to become bigger, better, faster, stronger, smarter? And that's just kind of the mindset that I've been able to develop early on that's helped push me through all this stuff.
Yeah. Who wrote the book? Is that Earl Nightingale, or is that like Norman Vincent Peale that wrote the
How to Win Friends and Influence People? Dale Carnegie.
Dale's neither one of those. That's right, Dale.
Written in the 40s, I think, and you know what, 80 years ago. And like I said, that to me is an example of there's certain books you're like, okay, but then there's ones you read and you're like, yes, this worked 80 years ago. It's going to work until we destroy ourselves one day.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are the ones that I gravitated towards, and I just started taking notes on universal principles. And honestly, my first book, I'm still working on this book. It's 25 years in the making, but it was just a list of universal principles that I found, that I read multiple times in different ways, and that I tried myself. And I'm like, okay, you can hang your hat on these. And so this is what I base my habits around. And these habits that I try to teach and help people with is saying, like, it's so easy to develop, the low hanging fruit habits, those failure habits. And it's not easy to unclaw them, to declaw them, right? They're holding on hard. They don't want to let go, but habits don't care if they're good or bad, helping or hurting you. That's the cool thing.
Right.
Once you are able to do the work and get over that hump, that front loaded work, then they're on autopilot, helping you build momentum versus hurting you.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the vision for you? Like championship leaders, I always use this example. I don't know if you're a football guy, but Bill Belichick of the Patriots, you got Nick Saban at Alabama, like they're competing with the elite of the elite in their profession, right? And they continue to show up and win just about every year. And so they have to have this vision that even the best of the best can't see themselves, right? And then they have the courage to take action on that. What's the vision that you have for more momentum and where you're going and the impact, most importantly, that you want to create from that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm, for lack of a better word, a movement of change. I want to get people moving in the right direction, and hopefully that'll pay it forward. And they'll want to then just naturally pay it forward to other people, and we'll kind of get the world moving in the right direction. I feel like we're moving in the wrong direction right now. Or at best, we're standing still, which is almost worse. We've got politically, you got like half of the world hates the other half, and it really just a huge spotlight got shown on, and the differences really were more polarized during this last presidency, I feel like, here in the US, and it just sort of spread worldwide, and it was like people were picking sides, and it's like, if you weren't on my side, you're the enemy. And it's like, no, you're going the wrong way. Like, we're never going to make progress. We're never going to, be able to reach our potential as humans, as a planet. We've got all this great technology and whatnot, but we're just like going back and forth and beating each other up. We got to do this instead of this. And so, my whole mission and movement is to kind of get people on the same page and say, look, if everybody's living the 5 core life, if everybody's firing on all cylinders and like basing their life off these principles, all that shit would go away. Like, there wouldn't be this hatred and this fear and this jealousy and this racism and this resentment, because if you're basing your life off of these principles where those things are known in your brain to be bad, like to stay away from, to do the opposite, because that's going to make you personally happier. So from a selfish perspective, do all these things just for you. And then hopefully, as I said, it'll spread through to other areas. And I do want to revamp the educational system. I think, as I said earlier, it's super broken.
Yeah. That's a tough one. Getting everybody, unfortunately, getting everybody on the same page. It feels like, there's no in between for a lot of people. I don't think it's true. And, I'll also say that I don't think it's as bad as what we are being told and fed on TV, the news waves as well. Like I travel a fair amount, and what I see is kind of quite opposite of what we see online or on TV. I don't know. I mean, the divisiveness definitely is there, but I don't see it as much when I'm traveling. Like, I just see people that actually like get along. So it's interesting.
Well, I don't disagree. Right. It's not like, but I will say, I think that there's a lot of politeness. And I think that, yes, we're all, we've learned, just for our selfish self-survival, like, it doesn't make sense to go around being like, F you, I believe this, you believe that. Yeah. So there's a lot of niceties like, oh yeah, I see your perspective. But from what I've seen behind closed doors, people have dug their heels in pretty deep on their beliefs. Yeah. And, there is resentment for the other side. And, I've got friends, like some of my really good friends that politically are completely opposite than me. Yeah. And, you know, we've just kind of gotten to the point where we just shelved the conversation because it's like, I'm not going to convince you. You're not going to convince me.
Yeah.
I respect you as a human being.
Yeah.
I don't agree with you politically.
Yeah.
And, you know, cause you know, there's that polite stuff at the beginning, but then you start to get into it, and then you get into like, you see the passion in people's faces and in your own heart, you know, you're like, why can't you see this? Like this, it's in black and white. And they think the same thing. And,
well, I mean, if you could at least, you know, shelve it and still have respect for each other and agree to disagree in a way, I think that's important too. So we shouldn't all believe the same thing. I don't think that's a good place to be either. So
sure, yeah, no, it's good to have healthy debates. What's important that I'm kind of getting at is expressing your opinions in a healthy way and being open-minded to listening to the other side and understanding they're a human being just like you. They have fears. They grew up in a different environment with different parents, with different friends, with different teachers. So you can't blame them for saying things the way that they do, and just being open to the fact that, okay, how do we come together versus, all right, that person's just an idiot. I'm smarter than them, and I'm just going to be quiet and secretly know that, because that's not helping anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. What's like I guess I'll call kind of like a turning point, a critical moment in your life? I think we all have a number of these that really shift the trajectory in our life, depending on the decisions that we make in those moments, and kind of that fork in the crossroads. A lot of people, especially this last year and a half, are in that moment. They're trying to figure out which way to go. There's always kind of that way you feel like you want to go, but then there's also, you know, maybe a bunch of other people trying to pull us a different direction. What's a moment for you? Obviously, you made the decision that you did, which has you where you're at today, but you know, had you decided differently, could be in a very different place. There's a time or two you can share with the listeners that might be in that moment right now?
For sure. So the first would be what that story I mentioned earlier in college, when this guy just happened to mention this book like 2 seconds out of the side of his mouth as he was giving a lecture, and something told me, go read that, and that started all, you know, my whole journey in reinventing myself. The second one would be probably choosing to quit my real estate job. I was selling real estate. I was selling land before I started my delivery service.
Okay.
And we were stuck in the office for sometimes 12 to 15 hours. This was 2006, 2005, 2006, half of 2007, when the things were going crazy, before the bust. And we were just selling land like hotcakes, you know, and we had to be in the office for these prolonged periods of time. The phones were ringing off the hook, and it was pizza or Chinese were the only two options. And I was, as I mentioned earlier, a healthy guy trying to eat good, work out.
Yeah.
It's like, there's got to be something better, and there wasn't. So as soon as things started to turn in the real estate market, I actually quit. I won a brand. I was the top salesman. I only worked there for a year and a half. The very first year I worked there, I was top salesman. We were making so much money with the company. My prize for being the top salesman was a brand new Range Rover. That's how well this company was doing. And so I was like the last in, and then the first I was like, I'm out. And because I had this idea for this delivery service.
Yeah.
People need this. And I quit, and people were like, you're crazy. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is just a blip, you know, it's going to come back. And I was like, no, man, the party's over. Like, this is it. And so I did. And I just took the leap of faith, and I actually grabbed my best friend that I was working with at the time. And he said no at first. I said, man, I think there's something here. You know, people need delivery. Like, let's do it. And, you know, like
so did it start out as you guys actually doing the deliveries yourself?
Yeah, we did. We started out of his, so I grabbed him. Yeah, he came on board. We started out of his guest bedroom, and me, him, and one other driver were our whole driver force. You know, in the end, we had thousands of drivers.
Yeah.
That's how we started. And we hired a girl to come in and just sit by the computer. And when an order came in, it would blink, and she would call one of us and say, okay, go here.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was very primal. That's not the word I'm looking for, but not advanced, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And, we ended up creating our own software and our own way to do it a lot more efficiently, in an app.
Sure.
At the time, iPhone had just come out the year we opened.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not, iPhones
Right.
now, your phone, you order everything on, you
Yeah.
click a few
I
buttons.
remember when apps first became a thing and thinking like, what is this? Like, and obviously now today, everything's on an app. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah.
That's very cool. So were you actually fortuitous enough to really see that this big bubble in real estate was coming and the collapse was near, or was it more like just ready for a change, 12 to 15 hours in the office, seeing the need there because you were a healthy guy and didn't want to eat pizza and or Chinese every day, or was it a kind of a combination of everything?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I won't say that I saw it coming, but I will say that when it started to happen,
Yeah.
whereas most people were like, oh, this is just a blip. Like I said,
Yeah. Right.
It'll come back, or, I knew enough. Like, we were doing these stated loans with people buying land that had no business buying this land.
Yeah.
And at the time I felt okay about it because they would then turn around and sell it the next week for like twice the amount. I'm like, wow, everybody's making money.
Right.
But when I saw that, that I knew in the back of my mind, like, something's got to give.
Yeah, I got you.
Because these people, if they weren't selling them, they wouldn't be able to make their payments. So,
yep.
And then it was a combination. Like, as soon as I saw that happening, I was like, I've been thinking about this idea on the side,
Gotcha.
going.
Yeah. Okay. We start to wrap this up. What are one or two things that, if the listeners were to implement today, it would help move their life forward today? What would that be?
Well, I would say, going back to your 5 cores, you should have your goal, your mission in life should not be a dollar amount, because you're always just going to be chasing. There is no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. There is no just sitting on a beach and drinking a pina colada. That's not happiness. Take it from me. I got a huge paycheck when we sold, and it felt great for about a week or two. And I was like, oh, it's like a huge anchor lifted off my shoulders, this business I've been building for 10 years. But then it was like, okay, now what? Right? It wasn't, okay, now I can just relax for the rest of my life. Yeah. And the point is, if you're not continually growing and you don't have goals and you're not moving physically, mentally, like, towards something, you're going to be in trouble. And in fact, there's this, here, let me pull it out. Speaking of apps, I don't know if you can see this. So this is the very first app, one of the very first apps I ever downloaded off the iPhone.
Okay.
It said the meaning of life. I was just scrolling through. It said the meaning of life. And I downloaded it, and this was the whole app. It was just a picture. And it says, we strive for more because we feel dissatisfied. We feel dissatisfied because we strive for more. And there's just those that are just listening, kind of like going in this loop. Yeah. And at first I was depressed when I read that, because I was like, well, wait a minute. You're telling me that we're never going to be satisfied. We always want more. And when we get more, we're going to want more, and we're not going to be satisfied. But then I thought, well, wait a minute now. How can I use that to my advantage? And that's kind of what my whole system and core has been based around, is you got to just keep moving and you got to keep growing. And in the main areas of your life that contribute to happiness, which I've identified that we all share, are these 5 core areas. Mm-hmm. So just keep growing, keep moving. Don't rest on your laurels. Don't be Elvis Presley and get fat and lazy and just say, oh, I've already made it. How many examples of that are there throughout history? Yeah. Where people, you see these rock stars, it's like, how many there was this show on VH1 I used to watch, Behind the Music, and it was like that's every single one ended in just their lives ended up just completely crumbling, right? Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like, no, you got to stay sharp. Mark Wahlberg's a good example. I respect him. He's one of these guys that he wakes up at like 4 a.m. and works out, and then he goes and plays golf. He does the things he's passionate, and then he's got like 4 businesses, and the guy's and he makes time for his family, and he's got his friends. He's got a show on HBO that I watched. I was like, yes, that he's firing on all cylinders. Yeah. That's what you want to do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. What are a few ways we can, the listeners can find more about you, follow up with you and what you got going on? So I actually have an app that I'm developing that is going to gamify the process of all the stuff I'm talking about. And it's going to help you stop your failure habits and replace them with success habits
Okay.
in the 5 core areas of your life. You're this rocket ship. And in order to get off of Earth's gravitational pull, you have to build enough momentum by stopping some failure habits and replacing with success habits. And you start with one core, you start with one habit, and then you build from there, and then you fly off to different planets and galaxies and solar systems, and you're meeting aliens on new planets who are giving you universal principles, and you're fighting through asteroid fields. It's going to be neat. So you can go on More Momentum, MOORE, momentum.com. You just go to the gamification tab at the top, and then there's an app tab. You click on that, and it'll say sign up for to be notified when the app is ready.
Very cool.
And at the top of that, my website, moremomentum.com. Again, MORE, momentum.com. There's my social media tabs. We have an Instagram page. We have over 400,000 followers. It's built kind of a cult following where we just share viral content that's feel good and kind of good news. And I also do little videos and interviews like this. And I'll probably put some clips from this and just share with people these universal principles and how to gamify them and use them to help you fire on all cylinders.
That's awesome. We'll get that up. When's the app coming? Do you have a
hopefully
timeline?
in the next 2 months is the goal. But this is my 3rd app I've developed, and they're never on time. So
yeah, I know that. If there's one guarantee, it's like it's never on time, right? Never when you want it.
Cost 5 times as much as you want them to, and they take 5 times as long. It was supposed to be ready a year ago. So thank you. Yeah. But it's a big one. I've been working on this system for 25 years. It started with a piece of paper, then it went to a Microsoft Word document, then an Excel document, and it started to feel like homework, which is why I developed this app, because I wanted to use this whole attention span deficit that we're all developing, where it's like we want this instant gratification and we're using our phones. I'm like, I'm going to reduce the friction and have that work for instead of against us. So when you level up on screen, instead of just a shallow dopamine hit, it doesn't do anything for you. You're actually going to level up in real life.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I appreciate you taking time today to be here with us, William. And it's been great. So
yeah, man. Thanks so much, Nate. I appreciate it. This has been great.
Have a good day.
All right. You too, buddy.